I'd like to start with introductions, just a limit of 2 minutes. We're going to have a very structured call so that we don't go on for 2 hours.
Right. I'm going to mostly listen. And I know, and you have, okay, let's see where we're going. Okay.
Is Barbara coming on?
I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't have any time to go, reach out and see, and she didn't respond. So I think we should just get started. Okay. So let's start with introductions in order of who came on first. Who's on first?
What's on second?
And to keep things moving, I'm going to mute everybody and give everybody 2 minutes to introduce themselves. Okay?
Yep.
All right. So we're going to start with Lorenzo, and the clock is ticking.
I'm a curious guy, a little bit too curious, I think, sometimes, but I made a lot of discoveries over the past 20 some odd years. A really deep focus on the destruction at the World Trade Center and on the airborne sorties in Manhattan, and also on the Pentagon. So it's mostly focused lately on the destruction of the World Trade Center. That's pretty much me.
All right, great. All right, and I'm going to mute you now. I'm in Worcester, Massachusetts, and I've been involved with the 9/11 movement since about 2007. I'm with the Boston 9/11 Truth and Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry. And I also worked on the Citizens Campaign Commission, which was a ballot initiative in Massachusetts in 2012. And professionally, I'm an accountant, not a CPA. I just kind of worked myself up there. I started with an art background and segued into numbers. I like reconciling. I like accounting. And I still love art, but I don't do it anymore. I just collect it and go to museums. But I feel like it's been part of my life to get truth and justice, part of my heritage. So there we are. And next up will be Jane.
Okay, I'm a Air Force brat. My dad was in for 34 years. He was a retired colonel in the Air Force. He was a navigator and a bombardier and a pilot. And so we've been everywhere pretty much. I've got an undergraduate degree in nutrition and biochemistry. I've got a master's degree in biochemistry and biophysics. And I've got a law degree from the University of Idaho. We actually grew up in Boise, Idaho area. So I love the Northwest. But I'm in Texas now and have adjusted to that because my parents said it was too cold up there. So they all stayed here, and you stay where your parents are usually. So I'm a practicing attorney in Texas now and trying to retire, but not doing too well. I think I've been studying this since 2014. I guess the lawyers are a little bit late here coming up with understanding what happened on that day because I swallowed it hook, line, and sinker the first no, I really didn't because the Bush administration, I know how crazy they are. So I really didn't necessarily swallow it, but, listen, the media is convincing. You think this one guy in a cave somewhere did this damn thing. and then until you start realizing it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I think I should have woken up sooner, because I've been studying the JFK assassination for over 40 years, and have been and known all the main researchers for that, and I should have known better. But I didn't. So we didn't start the lawyers committee until 2000. I think we incorporated in 2015, late 2015.
Thank you, Jane.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And sorry, Alan, I should have had you come on next because you joined us before Jane. So unmute and tell us a little bit about yourself. You're still muted.
All right. My name is Alan Abrams, and I kind of became involved serendipitously, sort of by location and where I was in 9/11, and then watching things unfold, and obviously seeing things contradictory within hours of their own news reports, and the narrative get shaped. And to kind of put it down, and I got a job at Cornell and ran into some other information just kind of through where I was working and who I was working with, and it bothered me some more. So I've been looking into the information, and finally, good to see that there's actual white papers out there. Whether or not they're accurately representing the data or not is, just another interest of mine.
Alan, I don't mean to interrupt you, but what do you mean by white papers? Regarding what?
Regarding, you have a whole bunch of geological data from the United States that was collected in the weeks after that, was difficult to get to without it's in a paywall, academic paywalls a lot of times. And so I have to kind of wait until I can find it on the free where I don't have to pay a subscription fee, embarrassingly enough. And then start looking through the data and actually asking questions. I have questions. They did certain reports, and then there's, as I'm sure, I can't wait to listen to Heinz speak. Actually,
On that note,
hear what he has to say, because it's interesting to me. In the most recent communications I got from Heinz with the information prepping to this, I see some answers to questions I didn't have, so to speak, and answers to questions I did have, but also raising more questions. There seems to be data missing or something. They didn't go far enough. They have the information, but they're not saying what is really there. That's just kind of.
Well, we'll get into that as we move along. Right now it's just introductions, but thank you.
And Susan, I hate to interrupt too, but Barbara's going to be on for 5 minutes, so I hope that we can give her time to get on before Hans starts.
Okay.
She's going to want to hear. She's about 5 minutes away from her house.
All right. Well, I'm going to give Heinz 2 minutes to just a brief introduction. And then Lorenzo's going to do an overview for about 20 minutes and questions and answers, if anybody has any comments. And then Heinz is going to do a presentation for about 10 minutes. Okay. So Heinz, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're muted still.
All right. Is audio good?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Heinz Pommer. I'm calling from Germany. And I have a diploma in physics. And together with 3 colleagues, we wrote the book here, The Ground Zero Model. We did so in our spare time 3 years ago, just because the message seems to us of the utmost importance that 9/11 was a nuclear event. And although I never believed the official narrative for one single day, I did not recognize the nuclear nature of the event for more than 10 years, until it was first formulated by Dmitry Kalesov. I knew immediately that Kalesov was both right and wrong at the same time, right about the nature of the event, wrong in respect to the dynamics and the missing radioactivity, where he had no explanation for. So it took me some years to come up with a satisfactory explanation, a model which we altogether nicknamed the Ground Zero Model, or GZM. And that's it, basically.
Is your book in English?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It is, okay.
Well, here we go. I'm bobbleheading again. I'm going to go dark. All right. So thank you. Is that it for your introduction, Heinz?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, and we have Barbara who just joined us. Barbara, can you tell us? I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Everybody gets 2 minutes, so that we don't have a 2-hour call.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. 2 minutes, huh? That's a big, that's a
You'll
big...
have more time later, but we want to get into the presentations.
I can do it in 20 seconds. Okay.
Okay. You're limited to 2 minutes.
Okay. All right. My time's starting now. All right. Well, I'm Barbara Honegger, and I'm the chairman of the board of the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry with Jane and our litigation director, Mick Harrison, and other attorneys, and Susan Serpa is our treasurer. So that's number one. I've been a researcher, very serious researcher, activist, and public speaker, documentarian on 9/11 since the day of 9/11. My major documentaries are Behind the Smoke Curtain, What Really Happened at the Pentagon and Didn't, and Why It Matters, and also the 9/11 Museum Virtual Walking Tour, which, unlike my first documentary I just mentioned, covers all aspects of 9/11 and uses the actual exhibit items in the official museum at Ground Zero to prove that it's a huge, big lie. And I've held high-level positions in the U.S. government, including in the White House, the Department of Justice, and for over 15 years, I was the senior military affairs journalist at the Naval Postgraduate School here in Monterey, California, area where I live, which is still to this day billed as DoD's premier science, technology, and national security affairs graduate research university of the Department of Defense. So I think that's 2 minutes.
Yeah, you got 9 seconds, 8, 7.
Oh no, I'll fill it.
No. All right, thank you. Well, let's get on with the...
You didn't say about your book. You also have a book.
Well, I've had more than one book, but my most important and infamous or famous one, depending on your politics, is the October Surprise, or just October Surprise, on the deep story behind the Iran side of Iran-Contra that resulted in a full subpoena power House of Representatives investigation funded at the level of the 9/11 Commission.
All right, excellent. Okay, so now I'm going to mute everybody, and Lorenzo is going to give his 9/11 synthesis presentation.
Can't hear you.
You're still muted.
Little unmute then.
All right, now that I'm back at the control screen, I have unmuted and we'll share the 9/11 synthesis website. All right, everybody see this? Okay. I'd like to start with the one of the first discoveries that I made. Actually, one of the first. Yeah, I'm gonna start right with ground zero, and talk about what was discovered when the bathtub was cleaned out of all the steel and building materials, and mentioned that there is what appears to be a subsidence, like a falling down of what used to be smooth and level bedrock in two places under the location of each of the towers. This one here is smaller. This one here is larger in diameter. There is a little bit of parallax and perspective involved, but this one here does really appear to be smaller, where this one, there's an implication that this circle of fractured, this edge fracture here would continue around here where they have the planking done, planking at the bottom of the entrance, most likely because they needed to stabilize the surface to use get their heavy equipment in and out. This is the location of the south tower. You can see that there are men climbing down into this hole. This section over here, where you see all this material that is, going into a gully, a trough, is called the deep hole, and we'll take a quick look at that in the damage reports. Again, this is the crater that we saw right over here. And it definitely appears to have, collapsed in on top of something. These are the damage reports, and this is twisted. This would be the south over here, and this would be the north, or well, you can see that there's a north-south over here. So this deep hole is what we see over here, where my cursor is right now. Again, damage report. Now, after studying all the other theories, I just couldn't correlate what I was seeing with anything but explosive and mechanical events. And after discovering the cavities that we'll look at in a couple of seconds beneath building number 4, I didn't know they were beneath number 4. I thought that they were these cavities. I could see that there was a subsidence here, and I thought that maybe later they had excavated these two cavities, but the two cavities that were beneath building number 4 are over where I'm moving the cursor right now, on the other side of this slurry wall, in this area right here. This is an animation I did after years of begging friends to do an animation. I have friends who do SolidWorks and could have done this. But this is an animation of my theory, which Barbara understands pretty fully now, that the nuclear event was a thermonuclear event, or the events were thermonuclear. They were sized appropriately to do the work that they needed to do. And the work that I believe that they needed to do was to reduce the bedrock beneath the towers, creating a subsidence, which allows the core to drop. David Cole on the Richard Gage Unleashed a couple of days ago, everybody's looking much more at the motion, the motion of the towers, and that is critical. And along with the timing of the seismic events, which Richard presented so well that Andre Rousseau had analyzed as events, major seismic events occurring, 10 to 15 seconds before the collapse of each of the twin towers, 2.1 for the south tower and a 2.3 for the north tower. So this image here shows a nuclear, it's an artist's rendition of what may happen in a thermonuclear reaction, where the material in the center is vaporized. Essentially, the volume is I mean, it's turned into a gas, so it's no longer a solid form that can, keep everything away from it. And the heat produced melts out to a certain radius, and the pressure produced during the initial impulse of energy produces so much gas, so much vapor, increasing the pressure, so it would fracture the bedrock around it, and of course above it. And that's, high pressure always goes to low. And if you can find a way, as we noticed, that there was actually venting that occurred from below just prior to the collapse of each of the towers. The next illustration is the mechanics of it. The creation of a subsidence allows the core to fall. And we'll look at a couple of videos that'll support that.
Excuse me. I just wanted to make one quick correction. It was Jonathan Cole, not David Cole.
Oh, thank you, honey. Thank you, Jonathan Cole. I get all flustered and mixed up sometimes. Thank you, John. That was a good interview, but still not. I'm still not in resonance with a lot of the interpretations.
And we also have a request to hang on to the diagrams and screenshots that you're showing for about 15 seconds.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Yeah. So you tell me. Okay, you want me to time it? Are we good on this one?
Yeah, we're good. Go ahead. You
All
got
right.
14 minutes.
Okay. This expresses the mechanics, what I believe to be the reason that they used a device to reduce the bedrock beneath it, the creation of a subsidence, in that the core was softened by incendiaries, most likely during the day. People did hear explosions. You could see in a couple of corners of the building that there was what appears to be incendiary melting of steel, the orange glowing molten metal that poured out. And we'll take a quick look at that in one of these just prior to the collapse, actually, of the core. So the reason that I believe this was done was to pre-stress the fasteners between the trusses and the perimeter columns and the core columns, so that when the explosive top-down dismemberment proceeds just after the collapse of the core, just that second, at the second that you see the core start to descend, you see the explosive dismemberment from the top down. A quick video. 36. Oh, there we go. You can see that there's molten steel pouring out of the corner. So there, on these floors here, there was incendiary charges installed to sever the connections between the perimeter faces and the corner. That's a sermization. It's okay. Okay. This is the moment when the corner starts to slip. All right. Did everybody notice the motion here?
Yep.
And that the perimeter columns are being pulled in. So that correlates with the animation, the second animation I drew. So at this point here, we really don't see any explosive activity up top. So motion, again, what Richard and Jonathan talked about last night was motion. So what I can surmise right now and through other videos is that you can see the tower, the antenna starting to drop up above, but this is showing you where the motion on the perimeter started. And this is just prior to what we'll see now is the explosive sequential explosions from the top down to displace all of this material, which has now been softened, severed, and ready to just blow away because they don't want it to fall down on top of something. It's going to fall down on top of something anyway, but you can't get much more dramatic than what we see next. All right, so there's a lot of material that we can see coming down. I'm going to go back to, I'm going to get out of this mode here. I'm going to stop share for a second. Actually, why am I not able to get rid of this? Oh, it's because it's a new window. That explains everything. This is the same detail. It's a GIF of the collapse, the corner as it starts to slip. All right. I have been so careful since I first discovered the cavities beneath building number 4, which I didn't know where they were. And the second I located, I may as well go right to the image. The first time I ever laid eyes on any of these photographs, what came into my mind was they set off a thermonuclear device in Manhattan beneath the buildings. And for the longest time, I didn't know where this was. I thought that when I saw these holes that they were the cavities, that they were what we saw beneath the Twin Towers, the subsidence craters that they had excavated finally. So until David Meiswinkle kind of poked me in a direction, I had not paid attention to, I'd been looking for the location, trying to find that location to help me understand what's going on here. And this was just totally startling because discovering the topographic, the geotechnical mapping of the site in the geological survey that described it as ice age erosion, that this was what the site looked like after they had poured the slurry walls and they had excavated down to the bedrock. That's before they started flattening it to build on. And you can see that there are details here. This is what they call a till-filled valley. And everything, all these lines go up. All of these lines here go up in altitude, in height, from this lowest point that they measured to. They measured down to the till. They did not go any deeper than a loose fill that they found there. This is the post 9/11 geotechnical survey of the site, and it's really, okay, let's move down here just so you can see where it's located by these overlays. The two cavities, one of them is located almost underneath the entrance lobby of building number 4, and the other one is located just slightly outside the east wall. And this is a detail of that site. This is sea level, that's 60 feet below, and that's 100 feet below. That's 80 feet below, or 20 feet below the surface, which is about where that bulge is in the center of this cavity on the left. Probably the same thing existed over here before they started chipping away, and we'll get into those pictures in a second. These cavities are 40 feet from the original surface to the bottom, both of them very, very similar in depth. And this one here is an indicator that says whatever happened right about here. Whatever charge was set right about here because the energy radiates out from the center and vaporizes, melts, and fractures. You can see that this fracture over here resulted in what is called an upheaval because that section of bedrock is now above the original surface, and this one here collapsed into the cavity. Again, the location, and that's just an understanding of topographics.
Just to let you know, you have 5 minutes left.
All right, pretty close. The seismic evidence is really critical. I appreciate Barbara for working with Richard in putting together a really good presentation on the timing. What I will surmise is as close to the actual timing of the events according to the local seismology. This is when the first aircraft struck the first tower, around that time. However, this is not an indication of what occurred. This is actually seconds before the first aircraft struck the first tower. And you can see that they have a scale over here of 10. There is a fairly sharp rise, but it's not a high rise. So it indicates something that I would imagine as being an amateur seismologist, as something that is closer to the surface, that would set the Earth in motion in a trampoline rather than somebody banging on the wall, which we'll see later. This is the event that I surmise occurred beneath either one or both events simultaneously that occurred beneath building number 4. But that's just speculation. That's just a theory right now. There's nothing to prove it. Here's a sequence of pictures starting from before they had fully cleaned out the steel, and you can see how much energy, how much heat there is down below, because they're pumping water on this to cool it down so that people can work on it. So there's a lot of energy down below, a lot of heat being stored by whatever occurred on 9/11 down below the surface, way below the surface of the bedrock. This is one of the 2 chimneys that were discovered in beneath building number 4. And this is a picture of that chimney over here and a picture of the other chimney, the other cavity over here. This is when they started to excavate beneath building number 4. They're starting to chip away the overhangs. These are chipping hammers on excavators. Here's what appears to be steel or iron pipe that is coming up at the end of one of these cavities, and we'll see more of that later. This is one of the most striking comparisons right here, because it shows old, aged, weathered face on a cleft, a crack in the bedrock that's been exposed to all of the elements that were able to reach it. Oxygen, water, what's in water, soluble in water, and this down here, however, is totally different color and texture. And it also indicates the direction of the striations in the rock, that Manhattan schist appears to have been upended during the formation of the Earth, so that its layers were no longer a strata in a horizontal plane, but became a vertical plane. This shows where they're chipping away had chipped away the overhangs. This is fairly freshly broken. And you can see that there are people hoeing away at this liquid, this slurry in the bottom, and cleaning up what they are cleaning off the surfaces. You can see that this is a chipped surface over here, newly chipped. And you can see that this is a completely different form. And you can also see that there are these these overhangs and undercuts. And it's a spherical shape. The geologists even reported that they couldn't find any indication of flow. There's nowhere for any head to have occurred in this region, any pressure, velocity, volume of water to have moved and built up pressure to a velocity that it could do major damage. And this is just uncovered. It was not there before 9/11. So there's so many arguments that support this.
You have 1 minute.
Okay, this is probably the picture that got me in the first place. The one that said, "Holy shit! Look what they did! Look what they did!" That's pretty much it for this end of the presentation. This is the new building number 4, by the way. Thanks, Chris Joya, an interview we did with him a few years ago.
7.
For pointing that out.
Building 7.
7. You're good. I was testing you. There is a new building 4 on top of the site, by the way. They're starting to put in the foundations. You can see the work going on over here, down here, and over here, putting in new foundations, which are now attached to solid bedrock. They could not have built on the site without excavating, and they really had to utilize the site. So this was the only cavity that was exposed. The subsidence craters beneath the Twin Towers are beneath each of the memorial pools now, and Chris Joya has been down there. It would be really interesting to, for you to approach Chris and say, "What were you doing down there?" at some point. But yeah, thank you very much for listening, and
let's open it up to questions and comments.
Yep.
Who would like to go? Jane?
Okay. I would like to too.
All right.
I'd like to. I'm looking at this bedrock and I'm sitting here going, how do you get a nuclear device down there in that rock? Because I think that, I'm trying to discern if we can explain an implosion by plain dynamite, or however they do it, however they implode a building. Why do we need the nuclear here? How do we get the nuclear device in that rock?
Yeah, that has puzzled me for the longest time, and I have no answer for that. I do know how they could get the device down 20 feet, and there is equipment that you can go to a number of hardware stores in the country and purchase compact diamond core drills that you can go down 20 feet fairly easily with. Or there may have been vaults underneath here, as some people have mentioned, that stored precious metals and other things. This may have been again, I don't like to talk too much about conspiracy stuff, but if there was evidence or lack of evidence that they wanted to hide down here, then that may have been the reason, was to destroy.
I don't know how big a nuclear device is, but I would assume if you have a solid rock there, you'd have to drill into it.
Oh, absolutely.
And that would be kind of noticeable, I think. But if there are chambers that were there already for other purposes, I guess I could understand that too. And if so, then is there evidence to that effect?
That I'm not clear on. The only thing that I've studied is the holes themselves. This is for other freedom of information through, getting design features of the building and finding out if there were vaults. Again, drilling a 12 to 16 inch diameter hole with a diamond core bit down 20 feet in the sub-basement level of this, you just need to come in with a pickup truck pretty much with a small drilling rig on it, and spend a couple of days taking out a core that you can drop a device into, or not drop, but place a device into.
Could that be done through a building, or could that be done through going through the floor of a building?
They would have been in the basement level.
Basement of a building?
Yeah, it can be done. I mean, there are compact units, vertical core drills that you just keep on adding sections to, pull them out, remove the sections, remove the core, and then go down and drill deeper and remove the next section. So it's a multi-step. They don't just do it in one step.
Okay, and Barbara has a question.
Okay.
Well, I have more than one, actually. The first one is, thank you, Lawrence. And have you done, if you go back up where you did the, could you, and I'll tell you where to stop. Keep going up to your graphic, which shows the level above sea level. Stop there.
Okay.
They're right there. Have you done one of these for each of the two twin towers? Because if so, it would be very valuable to see that.
Well, okay, Barbara, the answer to that question is the only material that's available now is the images of the subsidence craters in the location of each of the twin towers.
So they don't have topographical maps for.
They may, but that's something that I have not been able to locate.
Oh, okay, that's my question.
Yeah.
Without the topographical.
No, that would be geotechnical, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. My next, I actually have a comment on Jane's comment or question, and that is, there are two ways that some kind of a nuclear device could be placed under any of the buildings. One of them is that they were placed before the buildings were constructed, as part of the construction, which is what I favor. But for the towers, my understanding from Per Berglund, who also has a model like Heinz Pommer does, all of these models are slightly different from each other, but they agree that there were nuclear devices under the towers. Now, if I understand correctly, in the bedrock under at least World Trade Center 1, 2, 7, and now it appears also 4, maybe others. According to Per Berglund, and I've been going back and forth with him, he claims that there were wells already under the lowest basement B6 level for each of the Twin Towers.
Yeah. So. Yeah. That's a good possibility. Noticing that steel pipe in the area of building number 4, there very well could have been core drills already having been down there for a number of reasons. And the future destruction, I mean, just thinking about this, they may, again, I don't get too much into the deep conspiracy, but it could well have been planned well, before the buildings were planned, and that there were drillings to receive some high explosives. Or I tend to think that they didn't have that foresight, and that the drilling was probably done after or during the time that Silverstein Properties took over the development.
Can I make one other comment, Sue?
Yeah, since you prefaced it with 2 questions, I gave you 4 minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to mention there's quite a bit of evidence actually that these buildings were pre-constructed with the ability to take them down, and that it was actually required by the planning department of the city and by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. That's number 1. Number 2, there's an interview that if you don't have already, it's in Heinz Pommer's book, The Ground Zero Model, and he just sent it to me. I couldn't get the link to work, but in there is an interview that a woman did who worked for a company that was trying to get a contract to do Giuliani's emergency operations center. Their proposal was that it would be in a deep basement level. It ended up being on the 23rd floor, which is ridiculous. But anyway, in this interview, she makes it clear that when they, on the afternoon of 9/11, around 5, early evening, 5:20, 21, when they saw World Trade Center 7 coming down, everybody from her company who saw it said, "Oh my God, they're lying about what brought it down," because they knew, they had seen the original blueprints that had the places where the controlled demolition explosives would be placed if it needed to be brought down quickly.
Heinz raised his hand too.
What?
So Heinz raised his hand, so I think he'll be going next.
Okay, good.
Since Heinz is going to give us another comment, I guess with Lawrence and with Heinz, I just have a really hard time believing, being in real estate at one time in my life, that anybody would bother to want to rent any property in a high rise if there's a feasibility that they have these things prepared ahead of time to destroy where these people are renting. I mean,
that's precisely the reason for the cover-up, Jane.
No. I'm saying, is that a standard type of architect or engineering, possibility? I mean, is a standard thing that engineers would do for these buildings?
May I comment?
Yeah, and I want Heinz to comment too, if he can.
Okay, well, Heinz had his hand up before, so I'm going to relinquish my comment until Susan's keeping this in order, and I must respect.
Lawrence, could you take your graphics off the screen?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Sorry.
Yeah.
We'll get back to that at some point.
There we go.
Okay. You have just you have said a lot of correct things, but nonetheless, you have summarized the, let's say, my level of knowledge 5 to 10 years ago. So I had with one of the co-authors from this book a lengthy discussion and an exchange of ideas, and I finally recognized that these cavities in the ground are too far away, and I will send you a link with my precise evaluation and the recognition of my error. So the first part was the explosive event, the underground nuclear device, which was, I would like to call it a nuclear process. And the second thing is these cavities, which are I got into the same trap, so to speak, 5 years ago, and François Ruby, the co-author of this book, convinced me finally that these cavities were not related with the destruction process of the World Trade Center. But I'll send you the information.
Could you send that to Sue so she can send it?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
All right. Alan, did you have any questions or comments?
But I didn't get Heinz to answer that question. If he knows, okay. Is this a standard practice to have these cavities available under high rises in the event that sometime in the future you want to blow them up? I mean, is that part of the construction of the whole project?
That's what I was going to comment on.
When it first starts?
That's what I was going to comment on.
The questions to Heinz.
Oh. No. These cavities, as far as I understand, are of natural origin. That's the first point. The cavities we saw, not the cavities directly under the towers, under Tower 1 and Tower 2, but the cavities under Building 4 are of natural origin. So that apart, of course, the building code in New York had the prescription that the builder must come up with some sort of solution how to dismantle and build back the buildings. And in these times, indeed, explosive methods were, well, thinkable at least. So I think that the towers 1 and 2 at least were at the beginning of their construction already prepared for dismantling and an explosive demolition.
But not nuclear. But not nuclear. But not nuclear.
No, nuclear.
Nuclear, yes.
From the very beginning, at the very start, yes.
Huh.
This is the explicit claim of Dmitry Kalatov. He claims from inside Russian intelligence, then Soviet intelligence.
This is exactly what Kalatov also says, yes.
Yes.
But it fits.
But Heinz, could you respond to Jane's question about, I think she was referring not to the cavities that I don't think that Lawrence was referring to, that you say are natural, but to the ones under World Trade Centers 1 and 2, under the central core.
Well, this is a normal process after the I named the structure eruptive egg after the eruptive egg has been emptied of its content. So when the granite has been blown out, that the ground subsided a bit. This is a natural occurrence after such an event. So they are nuclear in nature.
You're talking about before the construction of the tower now.
No. These cavities were created after the demolition. But before construction, there were no cavities. The blueprints are pretty clear. It's a flat granite surface. And the only thing which is a bit suspicious is a small well, a small pit in the blueprints. But there must also be a borehole which must have been added prior to construction, most likely.
A borehole down to the pit?
A borehole from the pit down 75 meters in the earth.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
Hardly noticeable. I mean, that in diameter, not much. Any small drill could do.
And so where would the nuclear device be placed? In the pit or down 75 feet?
We have a sort of insertion point, which is 19 meters above 0 point, and an explosion point, which is at 0 point. And 0 point is, by definition, 75 meters below the rock surface.
So that's where the device would have been?
The explosion point.
The explosion point, where the device would have been?
19 meters higher.
19 or 90?
19 meters higher from 0 point.
0 point meaning ground level?
It's getting clearer in my video, in my short presentation.
Oh, we're waiting for your presentation. Okay.
Well, let me just say, give Lorenzo a chance to make any comments about what was just said for a couple of minutes. Do you have anything?
You know, Lorenzo, I can understand, Lorenzo, that they, if you're saying that's true, that they prepare to dismantle when they start to mantle, start to build these buildings. But I can't even imagine they would conceive using nuclear, knowing what they know about it. And these were built in the 80s?
70s.
70s? Okay, I mean,
all right. I'll make a couple of comments about process. And there's a possibility that there were already holes there for whatever devices they decided to install later. That Project Plowshare is a really good resource to understand what Lawrence Livermore and Los Alamos were working on back in the 70s, having to do with peaceful use of nuclear explosives for thermonuclear reactions, for reducing or for fracking, for breaking the earth down deep without having a vent, for cratering, or actually using the device to blow material up, away, and out. There's some major cratering experiments done, and for doing long craters or troughs or trenches.
And Project Plowshare was in the 70s.
Yeah.
So we're talking the same time period.
Yeah.
And it was basically de-vilifying nuclear devices for construction uses.
For being able to move earth and either down deep, alter it so that you could extract, frack for gas. You'd fracture the material so that any natural gas that's sequestered in this under pressure in this rock could then vent out. One of the big problems is it vents wherever it can, and if there's a lot of cracks, you can't contain the stuff. That was technology that was being looked at for creating underground reservoirs, for creating that cavity for building underground cities and habitat. So there's an awful lot of studying being done using thermonuclear for altering the earth, the rock, for the betterment of mankind.
Alleged betterment.
Heinz, go ahead.
I would just like to add on the nuclear front, there are two parties, so to speak. One party prefers to speak about a super modern nuclear weapon, which leaves no traces. And the other party is talking about old technology.
Yeah.
Kalisov does talk about old technology, and I myself talk about old technology, which was designed in the 60s and 70s, just to make that clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm talking about whatever they had that would do the job the way they wanted to, which was to produce the right amount of energy to do the vaporization and the melt, which would form the. Again, building number 4 is a mystery, and I think the first thing that I came out when I came out was Yeah, this is where the weird conspiratorial stuff comes in. And I used a phrase that they used during the First and maybe the Second World War, or maybe it was just as, if you got them, smoke them. You know, they here are all these talented and skilled nuclear physicists with products that can do work in whatever form it is, whether it was for the radiological shotgunning or whether it was for the formation of a substance for the core to literally collapse into, weaken, causing the structure to be compromised even more so that it would then be able to be blown apart. So we have two camps, which are the radiological, or the use of the nuclear device as a radiological device that could do work, or a thermal device that can do work. Am I clear on that?
Or both?
Possibly both. Possibly both. I mean, we could see that a lot of the steel that came
Let's
out.
confuse everybody. Let's do both.
Well, what you can see is that a lot of the steel that was being pulled out of these cavities beneath the subsidence craters beneath the towers were dripping. You heard a number of witnesses that were cleaning out the pits saying there's steel running down the channel rails as they pulled the steel out from beneath the Twin Towers. And possibly building number 7. And we don't know very much at all about building 7. That was a total secret from before the day of, early in the morning. That building was under guard after it was evacuated.
Well, Silverstein owned 7. Silverstein only owned 7. He rented the rest.
Yeah.
I'd like to say something about 7 that people may not know. I've sent it multiple times to the Lawyers Committee, and I can send it again to anyone who doesn't have it. But a guy by the name of Shapiro, who, as I recall, used to be a DA or a U.S. attorney, who was a close friend of Larry Silverstein's, a close colleague of Larry Silverstein's, he actually published that he was on the phone with Silverstein as they were leading up to the collapse of World Trade Center 7. And Silverstein told him that they were going to have to bring down that building because the basement level, the lower level, had been so seriously compromised. So that's important to know. I can send that.
How could that have happened?
Yeah, right. In other words, parallel to World Trade Center 1 and 2 for sure.
I wanted to give Alan a chance. Did you have anything you wanted to say, Alan? No? Okay.
Susan, can we take a 5-minute break before Heinz starts his? Because I've got a dog that won't leave me alone right now.
All right.
I gotta let
bathroom breaks for everyone.
In my house.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, I sure would appreciate it. Just kidding.
Okay, we'll come back at 5:05 Pacific, 8:05 East.
5 minutes.
Okay.
5-minute break.
5.
Anyone that wants to hang out and chat for that 5 minutes, we can do that.
High five. I'm in my library. It's very cold here.
I've got my pellet stove running really well lately, so I'm here in Massachusetts. It's still probably right around the freezing point.
Does a pellet stove have any toxic gases associated with it or not?
It depends on what's in the pellets and where you're exhausting it. If it's well sealed and you don't have any exhaust gases escaping the flue pipe into your house, there may be unburned hydrocarbons. There probably are a fair amount of unburned hydrocarbons in the pellet exhaust. But the one that I have now is actually operating better than it has in the past 15 years. So
the only heat from the pellet stove is from the metal of the actual stove radiating. Is that right? Heat? No, it's a radiant out through the glass. It's convection. It has convection blower that moves air, the basement air through a heat exchange that runs behind the fire board, the board behind the fire chamber, the burn chamber. I see.
So the combustion, the combusted gases go up and they're moved forward in the stove, and then they go across and then down behind where the fire is, and then exit at the bottom of the stove out the left-hand side of the stove. Where
So
there's
the gases are not coming out, just heated air.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Similarly with my rocket stove, mass heater.
Rocket stove.
Yep.
Is that nuclear? I hope not.
No, it's a biofuel.
Oh, biofuel. What kind of bio?
In this case here, red oak chips, red oak splits, maple splits, all fairly small because the stove is so efficient. I have a very small burn compartment in it, and I'll put maybe less than a square, less than a half a square foot of fuel in it every hour or so.
Lawrence, I've stayed overnight for 2 or 3 nights in Sue's house where you live. Are you in that upper room that we're looking at? What room are you in?
Oh, where I am right now?
Yeah.
This is my living room in my home in Hudson.
Oh, Hudson. Okay. All right. And who is the babe behind you on the wall?
Oh, that is one of my old roommates, Charles
Really?
Charles Coe went to Russia in the late 70s, and that is a pinup calendar of a Soviet a woman.
Really?
Yeah. He gave it to me. That was outside my recording studio door for the longest time. And it was down the basement until just recently when I resurrected it and brought it back up here. And it was for Charles because I wanted to take a picture of it for him.
That's funny.
And so I shared it on his timeline.
So where is Hudson? Is that in Massachusetts?
It's Metro West Massachusetts. It's between 495 and 128, closer to 495, closer to the outer belt, and between the Mass Pike and Route 2. Just really close to the the postal route, which runs Route 20, which runs across the country. It's US 20.
Okay.
I'm very close to US 20.
Well, it looks like you've got it very well organized there.
Oh boy, don't ask Susan.
Compared to mine.
Well, this is a room that I use fairly frequently. I get to jam with people all over the world on Saturday night on the internet with some of the new applications that have extremely low latency to the point where it's almost undetectable. It's just a wonderful experience to be able to sit here and not have to move equipment and get to play with people.
Interesting.
You might want to mention how many instruments you play. You've been a musician for 50 years.
Guitar, vibes now, keyboard, flute, saxophone. Okay, sax, flute, bass, guitar, keyboard, percussion, vibes, and now harmonica.
You're a whole orchestra.
Well, I get to play one at a time. But with multi-track, you can mess around and compose.
Yeah, with multi-track, you could be all of them together.
I've done a fair amount of work with a multi-track. I've got a fairly good catalog of stuff back there. And I really enjoy writing, and I have enjoyed writing in the past. I still enjoy playing the music that I've written, but I haven't done much.
We're still waiting for Jane. I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's on dog time.
Yeah.
Here she is.
You gotta go up here.
Okay, I'm back.
Here she is. In that beautiful office of yours.
All right.
Okay, Heinz, you're on.
All right. And you can share screen.
All right. Susan, if you could just start with the link I have given you.
Oh dear. I'm going to have to try and find that. Hold on.
Heinz, do you have the material there that you can share screen with so that you're in full control?
Well, I'm not sure. I might try.
Yeah,
I looked
Susan
at a
has given you
slideshow.
permission, so.
No, not a slide. The video, the pre-recorded. I did send you 1 hour ago.
Yeah, I've had so many other things that have been crowding my emails too. Here it is. Okay. Let me bring it up first and then I'll share a screen. Okay. Let's go full screen.
Due to the eruptive nature of the destruction process.
Okay. All right, now back to, no, I can't go full screen because I can't find, all right.
By the way, Susan, did you happen to mention in your introduction of yourself that you're a direct descendant, like X number of generations back, of the Hugh de Payenne, who was the leader of the first crusade?
He founded the Knights Templar.
And founded the Knights Templars.
Yes.
Well, Muslims wouldn't like that.
No. So part of the reason I'm for justice, because I have a heritage I need to correct. All right, share screen.
Now, that heritage was not directly attributed to your ancestors, but the people who came after them.
Yes.
That's true.
Hey, I'm Catholic, guys. Easy does it.
Whoops. All right. Everybody see this okay?
No.
Susan Serpa has started a screen share. Oh, there
we go. Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Due to the eruptive nature of the destruction process of the World Trade Center, the ground zero model assumes a...
Can you make it louder?
Namely, a pressure discharge of an egg-shaped...
Start it over if you would and make it louder.
Granite.
You can read it.
Well, but it'd be nice to hear it.
The World Trade Center, the ground
I'm trying to find how I can make it louder.
Namely, a pressure discharge of
Is
an
that
egg-shaped structure of liquefied and highly pressurized granite.
Yeah, if you could start over now that it's louder.
But how's the volume? How's the volume?
It's a little better. It's better.
Okay. I'll turn up a little more.
Due to the eruptive nature of the destruction process of the World Trade Center, the ground zero model assumes a single source event, namely a pressure discharge of an egg-shaped structure of liquefied and highly pressurized granite situated 75.
Uh-oh, the sound went away. There's no sound.
I can read it.
Can you hear us, Sue?
This is, if we have a problem with it, we can, you can each watch it on your own computers and, you know, with good sound quality and be able to move through it. But yeah. No sound.
It's strange. The sound was fine at the beginning.
Yeah.
And we can hear each other.
Eruption. After the final explosion or reaction peak, this borehole seals itself for a few seconds due to the friction of the upshooting melt on the cold walls, simply because the melt in the borehole cools down, getting first viscous and finally solid. However, the trapped energy already in motion tries to get out. By direct impacts of the atomic nuclei bumping into each other, energy is transferred upwards. Simultaneously, this constitutes an effective self-cleaning process. Radioactive nuclei from the fission process will stay at the reaction center. The erupting upper working gases are clean. The eruption lasts only seconds. The eruption channel seals itself immediately due to the side pressure of the surrounding viscous granite. Radioactive contamination stays underground, while the site stays hot for many months. Radioisotopes, if present at all above ground, are trapped and therefore masked in the iron-rich dust. The Geiger counter remains silent. Well, I think I make this again with my slides, so we have a more precise source for this. I try.
My sister, mother, and grandmother.
Okay, is this visible?
Not quite yet. Now it is.
All right. Time is given at the upper left. So we at 9 a.m. and we have 4 points of interest, A, B, C, D. So you have the small final pit floor, which is in the blueprint, which is guaranteed to be there. B is the supposed borehole, which is only 0.5 meters in diameter, so quite small. And Z is the first charge. I name this colors of point of emplacement, which is 50 meters below the final pit floor. And we have the explosion point, 19 meters lower, which is exactly at the elevation 0. So you have to understand that elevation 0 for the entire structure is an imaginary point in the granite 75 meters below this granite surface. So the entire tower is built from this reference point, elevation 0. And all the heights given in the blueprints are in relation to elevation 0. So you have the pit, A, you have the borehole, B, you have the engine, the reactor starting, the startup 1 hour prior to destruction, and you have the point of explosion. And the potholes, the 3 glacier potholes Lawrence mentioned, Valley 1, 2, and 3, are drawn in here. You see the excavators as a size comparison, but they are too far away for the process to be involved, at least for tower, well, for tower 2, obviously. So this is now for tower.
Heinz, could I ask that we can see that the drill hole or borehole does not go all the way down to 0 point, elevation 0. Why is that?
And it's the borehole is to elevation 19.
I know. Why not all the way down to D?
Oh, I come to that immediately.
Okay.
So next slide is, well, I hope this works. Yes. So this is 9:13. So this is about 10 minutes after activation. And you see, the idea is that we have a radiation weapon at first. So a reactor mix, not a bomb, but a slow progressive energy input. And I found a nice video sequence which shows like the lava, hot lava burns through ice, creating a sort of funnel in the ice. It is exactly the same thing if the reactor core of boiling uranium boils with 3,000, 4,000 degrees. It funnels down, just and simple to the fact that uranium, if we have, let's say, 30 kilograms of that stuff, which would be that size, that in size, smaller than a lemon, it would, due to its weight, funnel down. And the granite has no much resistance. So this is 913. And at the same time, you have a strong X-ray emission in this borehole. Should water be inside this borehole, as Rodriguez pointed out, there was a lot of water in the sub-basement as the sprinkler system was working, the water would boil, and through the steam bubbles, radiation would nonetheless escape in the tower and weaken the iron structure. So you have a radiation weapon going on, so to speak, 913. And it burns its way down, well, 1 hour. So now we are at the destruction moment or at the explosion moment where the uranium becomes supercritical due to the fact that it meets with the 0 box at 0 point. So you have a combination of 2 charges. Another possibility would be that something like thorium is just cooking out, boiling out, and somehow supercriticality is achieved at zero, at point zero. So explosion time is in this model at 9:58, and the chain reaction starts. However, the system is enclosed in granite. So normally you have an explosion time of a microsecond, let's say, or 10 microseconds. Which is, well, 10 millionth of a second, then it's over. In the Hiroshima bomb disintegrated, and only 1% of the fuel was spent. That's a fact. So now you have a system which is fully enclosed and cannot explode. So the chain reaction does not abruptly stop, especially if you have an iron shell. Iron is also penetrated by hot uranium, like a knife cutting through hot butter. The iron shell guarantees that neutrons, escaping neutrons, are reflected and return into the center of reaction. So this explosion will continue as long as neutron flux is high enough. So you don't have a reaction or explosion time from 1 micro or 10 microseconds, but up to 1 second as long as neutron flux is high enough, and any physicist will confirm that.
Heinz, it's an iron shell of what? A shell of what?
No, a shell of iron. You have an iron housing. The element iron is an excellent neutron reflector. So the uranium chain reaction starts, the neutron go off in all direction, and they are lost if they are not reflected. So you need some sort of reflector to get them back into the core.
You know, I understand. Where is that iron shell? Is it at the...
In this model, it's sitting down there.
It's sitting which place? At 0 point?
At zero, at point zero, the black square.
Uh-huh.
That's the iron.
Okay, so you're saying that there was something at the point 0 before the whole process started?
Yes.
Okay.
Or at least at elevation 19, which is slide 1, which is named Kalisov point of emplacement, which was actuated. So a nuclear process was started at this elevation.
Right. My question was, I understand that, but was at the time that the nuclear process began at point C, was there already something at point D that it reached eventually?
This is possible. So I have two possibilities. That I have a mix at point Z, which evaporates another metal, for example, thorium, which evaporates, which separates because of its different boiling point, and the mixture gets supercritical after some time, after 1 hour, after 1.5 hours, reaching approximately elevation 0. Or the second possibility is that a second charge was waiting, a second block of uranium waiting to be combined with the first one.
Which would have to have been placed before the construction of the towers if the well doesn't go down that far.
Well, yes.
I'd like to point out to Jane, if you notice, elevation 0 was actually in the blueprints.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's very important.
Yeah, this is a very important point, because everything is referring to elevation 0. And for a physicist, it makes totally sense. I continue with the presentation. So the reactor core is boiling down. After 1 hour and a lot of energy input already, the system explodes, but it's not an explosion like an atomic bomb. It's rather a very soft explosion, which can last up to 1 second, let's say, as long as neutron flux is high enough to continue with the chain reaction. Any physicist will confirm that. So then, under normal conditions, a sphere would form with a radius r equal to 25 meters. This is to scale in respect to the South Tower. But we have an open borehole, and we have a cooler blue cap, so to speak, the melt cap, which will shoot upwards. The water no, the borehole is now filled with water, and the blue melt cap cannot shoot out like a bullet, but it has to rise. And this is the exact moment where the magic filter occurs. So due to the friction on the cold walls, the borehole at 100 degrees Celsius in contact with the melt will cool this melt down, and it will solidify. It will get viscous and then solid and seal the hole. This is 3 seconds after explosion. And the trapped energy, the melt is already in motion and tries to get out. So we have not the normal process which Lawrence described first, that suddenly a sphere is created, but we have a starting sphere which already has its way up defined and is reaching this, but it cannot break out because it's suddenly sealed. And this sudden seal guarantees that the melt has a preferred direction of propagation. This is very important. Now, the filtering process, there's something you can ask any physicist. If I can just show this, this is the Newton's cradle. You see that? You see this?
Yeah. Yeah.
This principle is valid for Newton's cradle, the momentum transfer. It's also valid for billiard balls, and it's also valid for atomic nuclei. So if one incoming nuclear hits another nuclei, the incoming nuclei is stopped and the energy is transferred to the other nuclei, which is above. And if you have many atomic nucleus hitting each other, and with a preferred direction of propagation, energy is transferred upwards, but not the radioactive nuclei which are contaminated. They stay below. So you have the granite which is suddenly transformed into a hot pressurized gas without radioactive contamination. This should be clear during this session. So then you have this disruptive egg. You have, by the way, a chopper signal which shows certain blackouts, which coincides with the happenings underground. And this this eruptive egg is growing and is reaching finally the seal. So after breaking the seal, eruption can start. This is 10 seconds after the main reaction. And this coincides with the seismic shock waves, which we observe.
What seal? Could you point out where the seal is you're referring to?
The seal is the material which was shooting up and cooling down and then stopped the system. So I go back to the reactor. So we have here already a huge energy input from the reactor itself. The tower is already weakened due to radiation, which is received from below. And the borehole acts also as a vertical X-ray collimator. So radiation is poured into the tower, and my view is that the steel was molten, not by incendiary, but by radiation-induced thermal instability. So the upper blue melt cap you see in this reactor will shoot up, and that's the cooler part, and it will go into the borehole, and the borehole is filled with water. And you have friction at the walls, and the blue material here now is shooting up. You see the blue material is shooting up. All is in motion 2 seconds after, and 3 seconds afterwards, the system will be sealed because because the melt cools down. What's shooting upwards cools down and stops the movement, the eruption. All right? And now the egg can grow, and now can the eruption start. And this creates a very curious phenomenon. So if you have a focused pressure discharge of such clean working gases, air is sucked from the surrounding area into the tower, and that was observed as a matter of fact. So you have material shooting up, and the working speed of the gases I've calculated to be 100 meters per second. And very curious now is now, that's the last, no, that's the best, all right. That's very interesting. And it's, forgive me for the word, it's a physicist's joke, because the whole system is an exercise in the vertical throw. If you have an eruption speed with 100 meters per second, the material will rise due to gravity exactly to the inch, to the roof top line. And then it will stop, it will reach the apex and will fall down again. So the whole system is calculated from 0 point in the blueprints to elevate to, well, in this case, 500 meters, to stop at the roof line and to come down.
So you're telling us, I believe, that the 0 point being the core of the whole plan was actually selected. The depth was selected precisely so that it would reach just the roof line.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
I was wondering why the roof line was lowered a few meters at the early plans, and I expected a physicist's joke. And I calculated this joke. Well, that's the handwriting of the colleague, so to speak, the physicist's joke. I calculated the standstill with the normal G value of 9.81, which is the average. And I was disappointed to get 520 meters in height, about something about this. And suddenly it struck me that New York City might have a very, very specific value. And I got it on Wikipedia, which is 9.802, and it fits to the inch. So it's a real joke of a physicist, the vertical throw. And now you can explain also how the destruction worked, because if you have mass shooting up to the roof line, it's accumulating, and suddenly the system will be inverted. So you have more mass accumulated in top, and this will start to fall like a wrecking ball. At the same moment, you have still, with falling pressure, the eruption gases shooting up, and where they meet, where the wrecking ball meets, already in free fall, and the still up shooting gases, the tower will be ripped apart, and the steel grid will be torn apart segment by segment. And that's one of the main errors the architects and engineers always say, that we have seen explosives, a wave of explosions traveling down, top down. This is not the case. What we have seen is the pyroclastic flow, the avalanche from above, meeting with the working gases shooting upwards. And at the deviation zone, the structure, the outer steel grid, is destroyed and it falls together with the tower. And what Lawrence just said, of course, if you see the entire structure, a bit of caving in makes absolutely sense, because the eruption channel will widen within a few seconds. So you have a narrow focused eruption in the first 2 seconds through the elevator pit freight elevator 50, and it will widen a few meters until the system is sealed by the side pressure. So you will not have the entire contents spilled out, the radioactive contamination, but only the upper part of the clean eruptive egg will be emptied. Then the side pressure of the granite walls will seal and close again. Also, during pressure discharge, the egg will cool down, a natural process. And as soon as 2000 degrees are reached, the working gases can recondense. So you have to choose a very carefully calculated erupting point, because this sort of energy transfer via the atomic nuclear will happen only if the mix is about 5000 degrees hot and about 200 bars. That's a value from the literature. So at these temperatures, of course, the inner core is evaporated immediately. Molybdenum also at 4000 degrees is evaporated, and these small iron and metallic droplets are formed. They recondense in shape, forming in small spheres. All this has been observed, including the air sucked in, and everything falls into place. So we have everything together, the enormous energy amount, we have the observed dynamics, we have the destruction of the inner core, we have the destruction of the outer steel grid. We have also an explanation for the extremely low readings in respect to the radioactivity. We have also an explanation for the cancer cases on place, because something, of course, did escape. Also, it must be said that beta radiation is trapped in iron, so it cannot be trapped easily with a Geiger. It cannot be detected easily with a Geiger counter. Altogether, it's a pity that architects and engineers does not take into account that beta activity was, in fact, and that's also a fact, a documented fact, slightly elevated, about twice the background level. They said this is too low to be taken into account, and exactly that's one of the most gross errors they committed. It must be taken into account, and well, and that's it.
Thank you. Let's open it up to questions. I let you go about 9 minutes over.
Got a question. Got a question.
I got one.
Good. All right. So
Susan, you're the moderator. You need to start directing.
Yeah. That was Barbara first.
Okay.
Okay, Heinz. Couple of questions came to my mind. 3 questions. The first, and I'll say them all because they're quick. The first one is, given your model, could it be important that they locked the roof doors of the towers? That's number one, which they did. They made the decision to lock them on September 11th, on September 10th.
Yeah.
That's
no,
number one.
No,
not.
Yeah, their decision. I, in my view, that's poor cruelty.
Okay, so it's a coincidence as far as your model, though.
Well, it has nothing to do with the model. So
okay.
Locking the doors is just to have the people roasted inside.
Yeah,
I
okay.
apologize.
Well, the reason given was that, of course, it doesn't hold water, but the reason they gave after the fact, the officials in New York City, was that they wanted to make sure that the helicopters didn't come over because the heat and rising smoke was too much, and it could, the helicopters would be in danger. My next question is, this is very compelling, but it's also very complicated, and it seems to me that no one would ever do this without having tested it other places. Do you agree?
Well, yes and no. Just imagine you have something. You need 60 kilograms of uranium to make this process work. Okay, that's not much. That's two oranges or 2 grapefruits in size. And what you need is not an entire steel structure like the World Trade Center, 400 meters high, to test it, but you have to understand how the ground reacts, and that's pretty easy. So you have to drill your hole at 75 meters or 50 meters. You have to place your charge. You have to place your second charge, or make sure that the first mix gets super critical after, say, 19 meters. And then you have to look how high rises the fountain, the resulting erupting fountain, 400 meters, 500 meters, 300 meters, and how much contamination is in the air. And with that, you can already build a simple model how this will work on a bigger structure. It was.
Oh, no, I understand that. I wasn't proposing that. I mean, there wasn't another structure similar to this that they could have tested it on. I didn't mean that they would have practiced or tested it on a very high structure, just that they would have had to have tested the procedure underground, probably multiple times someplace on the planet in advance.
Yeah, well, I myself now, well, as a physicist, I'm making a small model of the World Trade Center, 1 meter 50, just to play a bit with the resulting pressure waves, lowering a weight from above and having a fire device from below, and a metallic cladding of my small tower, just to see how it works. Well, the principle is pretty easy. And if you are working in the field, and I really want to stress this is a physicist's game. And one of the big, huge mistakes is that the architects and engineers see this as a riddle which they have to solve. That's not their task. It's a physicist's game, and the physicists have to explain and to solve this. And they have to help the architects and engineers. But you have to consult with many physicists, because if you consult only with one or two, most probably you will get the answer, this is impossible. But if you consult 100, 5 out of them will say, well, that's interesting. And you have to find these people. And well, it makes sense. To me, it makes absolutely sense.
Okay, thank you.
And Jane, you had a question?
Yes. Are you saying that this process was available for both 1 and 2?
Absolutely. And what also puzzled me, yes, which is a giveaway, that we have so similar structures, and the energy output of the North Tower was twice as much, actually. The quake was 2.3, so twice as much as the South Tower, given the logarithmic scale, with 2.1. The destruction dynamics of the North Tower was, while the South Tower just feebly collapsed in itself at the beginning. So the energy output of the North Tower destruction was above ground, much higher. And I always wondered, where did this imprecision come from? If you have 2 identical towers, and if you have two identical devices, bombs, let's say, and 2 identical depth of burial, then you must have very, very, very similar destruction patterns. But it turned out that there is a huge margin of difference. I mean, both towers were destroyed in the same fashion, but nonetheless, the North Tower was blown apart completely, while the South Tower feebly collapsed in itself, comparatively.
Okay. So what did you come up with to explain the difference?
Just in a model. This model has, if it works accurately, it is a process which starts, but which cannot be stopped, and which has a lot of, let's say, variations, a lot of possibilities to go wrong, or at least differently. And my view is that Building 7, the destruction of Building 7 was done by a similar but not identical process, because we have 3 major quakes this day. One for the North Tower, one for the South Tower, and at 11, there's another quake. And my suspicion is that World Trade Center 7 was planned for 11 o'clock a.m., but something did go wrong. So they had to send some special, some other troops to bring it down finally, to give it a final knock, so to speak.
Yeah, that's why Shapiro has gone public saying that he talked to Silverstein, and that he didn't say at 11 o'clock there was a significant destruction at the lower level. But it's obvious that in the afternoon, Silverstein was saying, well, we're going to have to bring it down because the lower structure has already been so seriously damaged.
They had it. They of course, well, it was impossible to leave it standing.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not done with my question.
If you have a nuclear process going on, which is roasting the building and destroying the steel structure itself during hours, so the entire columns will get feeble and weak, and the building was ready to fall. So a radiation weapon.
Let me ask you something. The ones that were doing a lot of asbestos abatement on the buildings was Turner Construction Company. It's a subsidiary of a company out of Germany called HOCHTIEF. You probably are aware of it because it's the largest construction company in Germany. Are you aware of that company?
No.
Okay. Who would have the capability of performing this? Would it be a government, or could it be a construction company that's large enough? You know, or could it? I mean, who has the capability to do this?
In respect to what exactly now?
To the access to the materials. I mean, drilling a borehole wouldn't be hard, but uranium's just not available to everybody.
No, I mean who was capable of doing such a job of destruction?
I mean, construction companies or demolition companies, did they have access to those materials?
No. This is a sort of, this is a very strange collusion between many powers. So you have something governmental there, you have something private, and well, Rockefeller owned the whole. No, Rockefeller started the whole process, and the narrative of the terrorist attack was given by Ehud Barak on the very same day. And the more you look at it, you have one side is the Mossad, which is heavily involved in destruction, but it was not only the Mossad. You have also the CIA. You have some components of the Rockefellers, and well, the entire apparatus of the government is highly complicit. Of the United States apparatus is highly complicit in all this. Not to speak of the cover-up.
And then there's also
wait a minute, Barb. I'm not done.
Okay, sorry.
We were studying the anthrax too, and it seems like we're kind of focused on a private company there as well, even though they do jobs for the CIA, which was Battelle. So yeah, you're right. Private and government and private companies work together.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
getting uranium, is uranium that available to private companies as well, or just a few?
No. Well, this is a collusion between private interests and governmental interests. Finally, it was to shape a new world order, not only by some private corporation, but the military was behind it, some special branch of the military.
Yeah,
I believe that too. I believe that.
I'd like to make a comment here. And that is that maybe Heinz, you can, for people who aren't aware of it, the importance of this being involved with the service elevator 50, because it was the only one that went all the way from the bottom to the top of the tower. That's number one. And number two, it was leading up to 9/11 for many months. There was a so-called elevator renovation project.
Exactly, yeah.
By AC Elevator Company, or ACE Company, which was also ACE Company was also, I believe ACE is a British company. I'm not certain. I think I recall.
It was a company that was thrown together real quick from people from other companies.
Oh, you mean ACE was?
Yeah, it wasn't one of the big boys in elevators.
Okay, well that makes sense, because they would use that umbrella to bring together all of the operators they needed to collude to do this.
The CIA creates companies and then they go away.
Well,
then they dissolve.
Exactly, and ACE was also involved at the Pentagon.
Well, in respect to the nuclear plasma shooting up at 5,000 or 4,000 degrees, nothing can stop such a gas flow except gases. So if the elevator would have been blocked in the middle, so to speak, the gas flow would have been deviated and cut the tower in half. So it is necessary that the material can shoot up to the roof line relatively unhindered. Of course, it will evaporate on its way, all obstacles, but as a gas flow, it should have a smooth way up. And I think it was the elevator fortification, the elevator renovation, which allowed this. And also auxiliary explosions in the surrounding elevator shafts, because one elevator alone is a bit too small. So they prepared the building with normal explosives, which were heard all day or 1 hour in the building before it.
Well, the asbestos abatement project was going on for years, and that was Turner Construction. And they're a subsidiary of this German company, HOCHTIEF of Germany. It's your largest construction company in Germany. So that they were a subsidiary of that, and they were doing the asbestos abatement. Now, ACE was doing the elevators, but they were also, and the asbestos was all over the buildings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they had plenty of access to everywhere.
They had.
Yeah.
I would like to let people know that I am right now, as I'm speaking to you, starting on the 4th of the month, this is now the 7th, I'm in a back and forth by phone and email with an eyewitness who personally wired up the elevator shafts, on the outside of the elevator shafts. And Richard Gage knows about this. I'm going back and forth. I'm taking careful notes. I just typed them up. And I'm speaking.
Well, let's not talk about that now.
Well, you don't know about that, Jane.
I know, but we really need to stick to his discussion right now.
Well, it's just relevant to who has access to the towers.
Yeah. Lorenzo had his hand up. You're muted.
Lorenzo?
This just has to do with some fundamental physics, and essentially one of the fundamental rules of physics is high pressure always goes to low.
Well, high pressure always, well, it depends what high pressure is. So if we high pressure always will try to escape to the weakest point. And it's elementary physics, yes. But you have to nonetheless distinguish between a process where the nuclei are racing around in matter, so through solid matter, which is the growth of the egg, where this sphere or the egg can grow within a few seconds, 25 meters, 50 meters, and a normal gas pressure discharge where the atom is already an atom and has found its shell.
So your allegation is that somehow this elevator shaft, or let's just say the core structure of each of the twin towers, became a pressure vessel that allowed this pressure to go all the way to the top.
No. The pressure discharge, like a jet, was already freed in the final pit floor. So in the final pit of freight elevator 17, and just raised up. It's like a huge volcano eruption. You can really see it as a volcano eruption.
Well, don't those go?
You meant elevator shaft 50, didn't you?
So we do not speak about some pressure tight tube 400 meters high, which transport the material into the top. No. It goes straight through everything, which meets resistance.
That answer your question?
Not satisfactorily, but it is an answer.
Do you want to follow up?
No, I'll just let this go.
Okay.
Are we recording this, I hope, so that we could
Yes.
study the recording later?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you.
All right. Alan.
I had questions. Now you mentioned the iron spheres shielding the emissions in the dust. Now in a lot of this dust, I don't see any discussion of the different isotopes of the different elements per se. You know, when they refer to thorium, we're just, what isotope is it? You know, I know that, did they analyze any of that material to differentiate between something that may have been in the melted granite as a primordial natural product and something that was anthro?
All right.
You know.
Yeah. First of all, it should be, well, you should know that private companies, labs, were forbidden by threat of the loss of their license to analyze the dust by themselves. The USGS was permitted, but not on site, but only in the surroundings. The USGS did find some, well, suspicious some suspicious elements, but without specifying the isotopes. And with this, even though I also 10 years ago thought, wow, so much uranium, so much fission byproducts possible, but generally speaking, the USGS analysis of the dust without giving the radioisotopes and the exact atomic number is pretty much useless, because you cannot distinguish between the different isotopes of one element. It was not given. And in respect to the research of Dr. Loy, which is often cited, which is the core publication and which mentions the activated beta activity twice the background level, or radiocesium activity less than 1,000 becquerel per kilogram, which is fairly high, which is a no-go actually, because the level in Germany for radiocesium in food is 600, so you have some margin you can play with, but a thorough analysis was not made, and you have to prove in the ground if you bore down to 75 meters. If anything is important to take home with this lecture today, is that you have to prove in the ground if you bore deep enough, and it will be there for thousands of years.
Would you have to bore down under elevator shaft 50?
Exactly in the center, and about 75 meters, 50, it will start already, 75 up to 100 even.
So that would be under for each of the current, that would be under the pools.
Of course, you can see the pools as a radiation shield. I always saw the pools as a radiation shield. Curiously enough, there were 3 pools. So we have 3 towers destroyed, and the Silverstein, the small pool at the old World Trade Center 7 site seems insignificant, but it's curiously exactly over the hot spot where the reported collapse began and all the heat input was. So in my view, Building 7 was roasted by a radiation device, so to speak, in the granite. And the new Building 7 is much slimmer, much smaller. And over the hotspot now at Building 7 is the small pool in Silverstein Family Park, irony of the situation. And of course, the memorial pools, which are much bigger, but also represent, in my point of view, effective radiation shield, because water shields everything from below.
Yep. Indeed.
Wow.
This was quite a professional job, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
It is, yes. It's interesting to see the cunning and the malevolence and the knowledge and the professionalism all coming together. So it's really a bit upsetting, and it's also the reason why I'm so infuriated and was just spending hours and hours, thousands of hours in unmaking this riddle.
You're honorable for that. We've all been doing years and years of this. That's true.
Wow.
In your opinion, I know you're saying private and public, but there has to be specialists that know how to handle this. So it would have to be some of the military. And the military's fine, but they're not all brain scientists, so there's got to be certain units that could be involved with this, but we're not just talking about one country here. We're talking about more than one country.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think it might be self-defeating to try and answer all the questions about who done it, who was involved.
Well, we know certain people that wouldn't be able to do this. So, you have to kind of, if we're ever going to get to court on this, we've got to be able to try to focus on a certain direction.
Well, however, you can narrow this down. If this job was nuclear in nature, you can really narrow it down to a very small group of organizations and people.
Yes. Absolutely.
And one of the tale-telling things is indeed the question, who told us the false narrative? And there we have all the figures and all the names, and who shipped the steel, and who were in the knots of the control points. Well, there are people, and we know the names, who can answer a lot of questions.
Yeah, I'd like to remind people, and this quote is in my documentary Behind the Smoke Curtain. And that is that David Rockefeller, there's a quote from David Rockefeller to the effect, he said, it's been said of me that I'm, conspiring for a global world order.
And he's proud of it.
And he's proud of it. He said, well, I would, wear that as a badge of honor. And this is the person, when you ask yourself, is it beyond the realm of possibility that the towers were built in the first place, and perhaps some of the other buildings, but certainly the towers, with in mind to bring them down?
Yeah, that's my opinion. That's my opinion. And you have also these strange and, well, ugly jokes placed around. In the book, The Ground Zero Model, I've on page 133. I don't know if you are familiar with the joke. Gutless men carried it out. The exposition directly. I placed this here. It was actually a sort of mannequin puppet carrying a sort of coffin. A 9/11 art project, which was on site the day on 9/11. So they have their jokes. They have their own jokes with this story. Also, the artist, and which got permission from an organization which was presided by Rockefeller. So a lot of ugly jokes actually are accompanying this, not to mention even all the movies who predicted a destruction of the World Trade Center by planes or nearly destruction. There are plenty of examples.
Yes.
Bad taste.
Heinz, can I ask you a question? You got two books in Amazon, and the one you're talking about today is Ground Zero Model. I see that. There's another one here. The oligarchs' nuclear war games. Does that relate to 9/11? It looks like it does. So that's also another.
It is, but the Ground Zero Model, if you are looking for an answer for about 10 years, you make mistakes. And my former publications, they are not free from mistakes. And I'm still working a bit on the ground zero model. Well, the ground zero model is pretty fixed now. It's pretty stable, but I have small corrections. This book I showed you is, so to speak, up to date.
Okay.
Or nearly.
Okay.
Heinz, do you
and the second one, the oligarchs, nuclear war games, is that a separate?
No, the oligarchs nuclear war game is my code name, so to speak.
It's a second edition of the ground zero model.
It
says
well, I've some subject on my mind on the surrounding philosophy of all this,
okay.
Which goes deep into fascistic ideas and to expose them, because these ideas of world domination are not new, but
that's true.
Sometimes they frap us unexpectedly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
I did want to get back to the evidence. You know, that's what you need in court, and not too much hypothesis.
Well, that's why I'm saying, Susan, that it's a small world in the nuclear business. The nuclear business, not everybody's in that business.
Right.
Well,
it's a small world.
I have 3 points. Evidence. So first, you have the evidence on ground zero, on point zero, or at point zero, 75 meters underground.
So that's in the blueprint.
No, what we need is core samples.
Well, that's the first. You have the evidence, and you have them for thousands of years. Second, if you connect with a physicist and ask them, make this sense, if they are pressed, they will admit yes. So if you imagine you have all the explosives in the world, how can you make a tower erupt like this? How can you make the air being sucked into? How can you create also all sorts of skin cancers, letting alone asbestos, which are good as an explanation for lung cancers, but does not cover all. So you have so many ready answers in the destruction, or in the dynamics of the destruction, in the observed phenomena, that any physicist, or a lot of physicists, if pressed, will sign you a document that the ground zero model is very close to the truth. But only if pressed. If you ask 1 or 2 randomly, you find always people who cry out, no radioactivity, so impossible. There's no possibility to have a nuclear process without having a clear radioactive fingerprint. And they're dismissing the fact that every nuclear reactor at home or in the next city is doing exactly the same. So producing energy out of a fission process with an effective filtering system. And the filtering system is explained. This is the riddle of 9/11. Where is the radioactive fingerprint? As soon as you are capable of explaining the filtering process in the granite, underground, and the clean erupting gases, you have won, basically. And we are now at this level.
We need to prove it.
The damage is from the beta radiation. The damage to the lungs and to people is beta radiation, correct?
Well, my colleague, another idea. Well, I was talking about the samples and the destruction dynamics. My colleague François Roby, who is a French professor of physics, calculated the energy involved in the cooling process. And the energy alone gives all the process away, because if you have a 3-month cooling period, all the tower should have been consisted of carbon or some burnable material, of coal, because the input of energy was immense. No way that any classical incendiary could have produced such amounts of energy.
Totally concur.
So you see architects and engineers focus on destruction, but they do not calculate the energy which was emanating 3 months afterwards. And we have to sum it all up. So the radiation input at the start, the destruction process, the energy, and most important of all, the energy of the cooling down process. Just they poured millions of gallons of water in, and the stuff evaporated for months.
Yeah.
So beta radiation would not be apparent with measuring equipment, and that's what could be causing the damage to the first responders.
Wait. So if you take a cheap Geiger counter and you have beta radiation isotopes trapped in microsphere, in iron microsphere or metallic microspheres, the Geiger counter will show no signal.
Okay.
If you inhale the dust and it comes in contact with salty body fluids or with stomach acid, the metallic microspheres will dissolve, and the isotopes, the radioactivity can be absorbed by your body and cause harm everywhere. So for a proper analysis, you should have dissolved the dust in boiling sulfuric acid and then measuring it with a scintillation device. So the method applied by Dr. Loy and his team, simply putting some dust into the counter in the scintillation device, is not a correct one. And I was told that by a lab manager in Germany.
Wow.
I could see that causation being a problem, though, being difficult.
What do you mean, Jane? So you didn't know?
Well, I mean, in law, you have to prove causation to link an injury to an event.
Oh.
And that would be a difficult causation to link, I believe. Maybe.
Well, as a matter of fact, I was always surprised, or it was always a suspicion for me, a sort of proof, a non-understandable proof. So we have no radioactivity measured by the official documents, but we have cancers as if radioactivity were on place and working.
Correct.
So, and it's also very important to understand that a short intake of some radioactive material causes much less harm than a continuous intake of a small quantity over 3 months or 6 months. So it's the accumulated amount of the radiation you absorb in your body.
And you've said that it was the thyroid cancers that give the game away.
Thyroid also peaked, but well, you have other cancers as well.
Yes, but I thought the thyroid cancers were the critical.
Well, they peaked. They peaked in the first month, and that's when iodine is active. Iodine has a pretty rapid decay time, a half-life. So a thyroid cancer, you can expect it to peak in the first year, and then other cancers will take their part and will grow.
Well, I think it took them 5 months or more to get this place halfway cleaned up.
Yeah. So I estimate that about 100 millisievert as a dose were received, and that dose causes cancer in 10% of the irradiated people.
Okay.
Wow. Well, guys, it's going to take me.
Thank you so much.
Half the night to download and upload this recording. So I'd like.
9/11. It's 9/11.
Yes.
Hey, I've got to go, guys. It's 9/11.
Yeah, we're ending at 9/11.
Thank you, Heinz, very much.
Lots of
Thank you, Larry.
good information and questions. All
right, Lawrence, I will send you the files tomorrow.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Heinz.
Okay, and we look forward to the link to the video.
Are we going to have this other gentleman on, Barbara, that you've been talking to that has a similar...
As I've explained to you in emails today, Jane, he's not willing to do that yet.
Okay.
But it's my job to get him to say yes. So
I think this crowd he would be interested. He would be able to explain it to them better.
Yeah, his name is Per Berglund. And Heinz, are you familiar with his model?
Who?
Per, P-E-R, Berglund of Sweden.
I already mailed you. Yes. Well, you didn't get the mail because it was rejected, actually. I know Per Berglund, yes, he has another idea, and he was a bit furious about me because I insisted on my gas pressure chamber. He is on the other camp, so to speak. He believes in a very sophisticated nuclear weapon of some futuristic design, which I do not.
Right. Yeah. At some point, hopefully, we can have the two of you on to discuss the pros and cons. But if you could send me that email again, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I've asked Jeff Prager to forward it to you.
Oh,
or I'll try again tomorrow.
I wonder, did it say why it didn't go through?
It was suspected to be a spam mail.
Oh, you mean I might have gotten it in, but it's in spam?
No. It was rejected automatically.
Oh, okay. We'll try again.
We all had trouble with Barbara's email for some reason. We don't know.
It wasn't mine in this case. It was,
oh, well.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm going to go watch
Barbara, thank you,
State of the Union.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, everybody.
Before we go, when do we want to do this again?
Tuesday.
Just send us we need 2 weeks to absorb things.
Yeah, we need to get the video and have quite a while to review it again.
I need to get Heinz's book so I can understand better.
Yeah, I've read Heinz's book.
And I sent you the latest slides already.
Yes, we've got.
I can do so again.
You sent to who? Just to Sue?
No, to
I got them.
Oh, okay.
I'll send them again, the whole package.
Okay. I don't know that I have. When did you send it, Heinz?
I've got it. I'll send it to you.
1 day ago or so.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think I have that. All right. Thanks for forwarding it, Jane.
Yeah, I will. I'll send it to you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thank you all.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.